Welcome to News Edge, your sharpest source for daily headlines and deep dives. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay ahead of the curve. On September 10, 2025, the Middle East conflict erupted in an unexpected place, Doha, Qatar. The city, long considered a safe haven and a neutral ground for international diplomacy, suddenly found itself at the epicenter of a crisis that would reverberate far beyond its borders. The world watched in disbelief as the familiar skyline was marred by plumes of smoke, a stark contrast to the city's usual calm. An Israeli airstrike struck a building that housed senior Hamas leaders, key figures who had been deeply involved in ongoing peace negotiations. The attack was not just a military operation, it was a calculated move that targeted individuals at the heart of delicate diplomatic efforts. The building, once a hub of secret meetings and tense discussions, was reduced to rubble in seconds, its significance lost beneath the debris. This was not a battlefield but the heart of a nation renowned for brokering peace. Doha had built its reputation as a mediator, a place where adversaries could sit across the table and search for common ground. The city's diplomatic district, usually bustling with envoys and negotiators, was now eerily silent, its sense of security shattered. The attack shattered Doha's calm, sending shockwaves through the city and signaling a dangerous escalation in the conflict. Residents, unaccustomed to such violence, were left reeling, many in disbelief that their city could become a target. Sirens wailed as emergency crews rushed to the scene, and the streets filled with confusion and fear. The strike was precise, devastating, and deeply symbolic. It was a message not just to Hamas, but to all those who believed in the power of dialogue. The destruction was a stark reminder of how quickly hope can be replaced by chaos, and how fragile the peace process truly is. For months, Qatar had hosted delicate talks, serving as a bridge between enemies. Diplomats from around the world had gathered in Doha, working tirelessly to find a path to peace. The city had become a beacon of hope, a rare place where dialogue seemed possible even in the darkest times. By targeting this diplomatic hub, Israel sent a message: nowhere is off limits. The world was stunned by the audacity of the strike. News outlets across the globe interrupted regular programming to cover the unfolding crisis, and people everywhere watched in shock as the story developed. The attack raised urgent questions about the future of negotiations and regional stability. Analysts debated whether peace talks could survive such a blow, and diplomats scrambled to assess the damage not just to buildings, but to trust and cooperation painstakingly built over months. Doha, once a symbol of hope, was now a scene of destruction and fear. The city's residents, diplomats, and international observers alike mourned the loss of life and the setback to peace. The sense of vulnerability was palpable, as was the uncertainty about what the future would hold. The strike was a direct blow to diplomacy, threatening to unravel months of progress. Negotiation rooms that once echoed with debate now stood empty, their tables littered with abandoned documents and shattered dreams. The painstaking work of building trust seemed to have been undone in an instant. As the dust settled, a new, more perilous chapter of the conflict began. The city braced for what might come next, with heightened security and a sense of foreboding hanging in the air. Rescue workers combed through the rubble, searching for survivors and answers. The world watched, anxious for what would come next. Leaders from every corner of the globe issued statements, some calling for restraint, others warning of further escalation. As Doha struggled to recover, the international community faced a sobering reality. The heart of diplomacy had been struck, and the path to peace was now more uncertain than ever. In Jerusalem, Israeli leaders quickly justified the strike. Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a necessary blow against terrorist masterminds, not negotiators. Israel's message, "No enemy is beyond reach," and national security trumps geography. The Israeli public was told this was justice for past attacks. In stark contrast, Qatar's prime minister condemned the strike as state terror and a betrayal of peace efforts. Qatar accused Israel of sabotaging negotiations and violating its sovereignty. The diplomatic rift deepened instantly, with both sides entrenched in their positions. For Qatar, the attack was a profound breach of trust. The fallout threatened to upend years of careful mediation. The world's response was swift and critical. Capitals from London to Beijing condemned Israel's strike as a violation of Qatari sovereignty. The United Nations convened an emergency session, underscoring the gravity of the crisis. Even the United States, Israel's closest ally, expressed deep concern about the impact on peace talks. The attack isolated Israel diplomatically, with calls for sanctions and a reassessment of alliances. Many saw the strike as reckless, risking a wider regional conflict. Israel's explanations failed to convince much of the international community. The diplomatic cost was immediate and severe. Israel now faced unprecedented global pressure. In Doha, rescue teams raced to the rubble, searching for survivors and recovering the dead. The city, unaccustomed to war, was plunged into chaos and mourning. Conflicting reports emerged. Israel claimed a major victory, but rumors suggested some Hamas leaders survived. Hamas quickly declared its leadership intact, fueling propaganda and uncertainty. The truth remained unclear, but the destruction was undeniable. For Qatar, the attack was a national trauma. The world was left guessing. Was this a tactical success or a strategic blunder? Only the devastation in Doha was certain. The airstrike in Doha sent shockwaves through the region, shattering what little remained of the fragile peace process. In a single devastating moment, the city's skyline was marred by plumes of smoke, and the world watched as hopes for a diplomatic breakthrough seemed to vanish before their eyes. The attack was not just a blow to the city, but to the very idea that peace could be achieved through dialogue and negotiation. In an emotional press conference, Qatar's prime minister declared that hopes for the remaining hostages in Gaza were now dead. The government's official statement was somber, acknowledging the loss of any realistic chance to secure the safe return of those still held captive. The sense of despair was palpable, as officials struggled to find words to address the families and the international community. The 6 Hamas negotiators who were killed in the strike had been central figures in the ongoing talks. Their experience and influence were seen as crucial to any potential agreement. With their deaths, a vital link in the chain of communication was abruptly and violently severed. The negotiation table now sits empty, a stark symbol of abandoned hopes. The last channel for meaningful communication between the parties has been cut off, leaving only silence where there was once cautious optimism. For Israeli families, the news was devastating. Many had clung to the hope that their loved ones would return home, but now, that hope has been replaced by anger and heartbreak. Rallies and protests erupted, with families demanding answers and accountability from their leaders. The attack has deepened divisions within Israel, sparking heated debates in parliament and on the streets. Citizens are now more divided than ever over the government's priorities and its handling of the crisis, with some calling for stronger action and others urging restraint. Internationally, negotiations have ground to a halt. The United States and other key players have expressed grave doubts about any path forward, their confidence in the peace process shaken to its core. The somber faces of diplomats reflect a growing sense of hopelessness. By targeting negotiators during active peace talks, a fundamental rule of diplomacy has been broken. Trust, once fragile, is now completely destroyed. The image of a handshake interrupted has become a powerful symbol of this betrayal. The door to diplomacy has slammed shut, leaving the region teetering on the edge of further chaos. Protests have erupted across the Middle East, and the threat of more violence looms large. This strike may have killed not just individuals but the very possibility of peace itself. Symbols of hope, olive branches, doves, and peace rallies now lie abandoned or defaced, replaced by the grim reality of war. The consequences for the region are likely to be long and bloody. As military convoys mobilize and civilians flee their homes, the dream of peace seems more distant than ever, and the shadow of conflict threatens to engulf the entire Middle East. Qatar now faces a crossroads. Its years as a trusted mediator may be over after the attack on its soil. Domestic anger and regional pressure are mounting, making neutrality nearly impossible. The Qatari government is openly reconsidering its role in the peace process. If Qatar withdraws, a critical diplomatic channel vanishes. Egypt has some influence, but Qatar's unique access to Hamas was irreplaceable. Without Qatar, even starting new talks becomes far more difficult. The loss of Qatar as mediator would be a major setback for peace. The region's future may hinge on Qatar's next move. The recent strike on Doha, combined with a series of Israeli attacks in Yemen, has pushed the Middle East closer to the edge than ever before. What was once a simmering conflict has now erupted into a crisis that threatens to destabilize the entire region. The world watches as tensions escalate, with each new development sending shockwaves through global capitals and financial markets. The sense of uncertainty is palpable, and the fear of a wider war is growing by the day. Iran and its network of regional allies interpret these escalations as undeniable evidence of Israeli aggression. For them, the latest attacks are not isolated incidents but part of a broader campaign that threatens their interests and security. This perception has only fueled calls for retaliation, raising the risk that a local conflict could spiral into a much larger and more dangerous confrontation involving multiple nations. Across the Arab world, outrage is mounting. Arab nations, united in their condemnation, are now planning a coordinated response. This could include sweeping economic sanctions, the severing of diplomatic ties, and even the mobilization of regional alliances. The sense of solidarity is stronger than ever, as leaders seek to present a unified front against what they see as unacceptable aggression. Years of painstaking diplomatic efforts and fragile cooperation have been shattered almost overnight. The trust that once held adversaries at bay has evaporated, replaced by suspicion and open hostility. The collapse of dialogue has left a dangerous vacuum, making the prospect of peaceful resolution seem more distant than ever. In response, Israel has adopted a new, far more aggressive doctrine. Its leaders have vowed to pursue their enemies wherever they may be, signaling a willingness to take risks that could have unpredictable consequences. This shift in strategy has alarmed both friends and foes, raising questions about how far Israel is prepared to go to defend its interests. The entire region is now on high alert. Armies are mobilizing, borders are being fortified, and intelligence agencies are working around the clock to monitor every development. With so many forces on edge, even a minor incident could trigger a rapid escalation, making the risk of war ever present. What was once a contained conflict now threatens to engulf the entire Middle East. The violence is spreading, displacing families and overwhelming humanitarian agencies. The fear is that if the current trajectory continues, no country in the region will remain untouched by the chaos. The stakes for peace and stability have never been higher. International organizations and world leaders are scrambling to find a way to de-escalate the crisis, but time is running out. The choices made in the coming days will shape the future of the region for years to come. In this volatile environment, one misstep, one miscalculation, could ignite a catastrophic regional war. The world holds its breath, hoping that diplomacy can prevail before it's too late. Amid the diplomatic crisis, the human cost keeps rising. In Yemen, Israeli strikes killed dozens, with civilians caught in the crossfire. In Gaza, the humanitarian crisis is catastrophic. Homes, hospitals, and lives destroyed. Most of the population is displaced, struggling for survival. With peace talks collapsed, suffering is set to worsen. Media restrictions make it hard to know the full extent of the devastation. The world sees only fragments of the tragedy. For ordinary people, the war means fear, loss, and a bleak future. They pay the highest price for failed diplomacy. In Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu defends the Doha strike as necessary and just. Critics accuse him of escalating the conflict to protect his political future. Many Israelis, especially hostage families, feel betrayed by the collapse of negotiations. The decision has deepened divisions within Israeli society. Netanyahu's leadership is under intense scrutiny, his legacy now tied to the outcome of this gamble. If the hostages are not returned, public pressure for his resignation will mount. The strike was a political act with far-reaching consequences. Netanyahu has risked Israel's alliances and the only path to peace. The future of Israel and the region hangs in the balance.